The tears streaming down Daisy Richardson's face mingled with the morning rain as she huddled beneath the inadequate shelter of a cottonwood tree. Her entire life reduced to a single carpet bag and the sodden clothes on her back. Superior, Arizona, 1882, once full of promise, now seemed like the cruelest joke God could have played on her. She'd arrived just 3 months ago with Thomas, her husband of 5 years, both of them flush with dreams of silver mining fortunes. Now Thomas was gone, along with every cent they had saved, leaving behind nothing but debts and a note explaining he'd fallen for a saloon girl and was heading to California. Daisy wiped futilely at her cheeks, her wedding ring already pawned to pay for one last night at the boarding house. Come morning, Mrs. Holloway had made it clear she wouldn't extend any more credit. With nowhere to go and no family within 1,000 miles, Daisy had wandered to the edge of town, her future as bleak as the storm-darkened sky. "Madam, you all right there?" The voice startled her. Through tear-blurred vision, she made out a tall figure on horseback, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. The man dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the muddy ground. "I'm fine," Daisy lied, trying to straighten her posture despite the shivering that racked her body. The stranger stepped closer, and she could see him clearly now, broad-shouldered and sun-weathered, with kind eyes that contradicted the rough exterior. His dark mustache twitched slightly as he frowned at her obvious distress. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look fine," he said gently. "Name's Wade Vance. I run cattle north of town." Daisy hesitated, her mother's warnings about strange men fighting with her desperate circumstances. But there was something trustworthy in his steady gaze. "Daisy Richardson," she answered finally. "And no, I'm not fine. My husband, he's gone, took everything." Her voice broke. "I have nowhere to go." Wade Vance studied her for a long moment, rain pattering against his slicker. Then he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a clean bandana, offering it to her. "I'll help you start over," he said simply, as if offering to carry a package rather than salvage a life. "Got a ranch hand's cabin sitting empty. It ain't much, but it's dry and there's honest work if you're willing." Daisy stared at him, suspicious of kindness after such betrayal. "Why would you help a stranger?" A shadow passed over his face. "Been where you are. Know what it's like when the world turns its back." He gestured to his horse. "You can ride, I'll walk alongside." Daisy clutched her bag tighter. "I can't accept charity." "It ain't charity if you work," Wade countered. "My cook quit last month. Ranch hands are about to mutiny over my biscuits." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Can you cook?" Despite everything, Daisy found herself returning a small smile. "Better than most." "Then it's a fair trade. You feed my crew, I provide a roof." He extended his hand. "Deal?" Daisy hesitated only briefly before placing her trembling hand in his calloused palm. "Deal." The moment their hands connected, a jolt went through Daisy that had nothing to do with the cold rain. She quickly withdrew her hand, reminding herself that her heart was too freshly broken to notice anything about this stranger beyond his unexpected kindness. Wade helped her onto his horse, a beautiful chestnut mare, and handed her the reins. "This is Penny. She's gentle as they come." Daisy nodded, grateful for the security of the saddle as Wade began leading them away from town. The rain was easing now, and through breaks in the clouds, she could see rolling hills dotted with saguaro cacti stretching toward distant mountains. "How far is your ranch?" she asked. "About 8 miles north. Place called Sycamore Creek Ranch." Wade glanced back at her. "Hope you don't mind, but we'll need to stop in town first. Got supplies to pick up and you might want some things too." Daisy tensed. "I told you I have no money." "Consider it an advance on wages," Wade said. "You can pay it back when you're settled." They reached Main Street, and Daisy pulled her bonnet lower, mortified at the thought of being seen in her current state. Superior was small enough that her humiliation was likely already common knowledge. Outside Hartman's general store, Wade helped her down from Penny, tying the horse to the hitching post. Daisy followed him inside, where the warmth and familiar sense of coffee, tobacco, and dry goods enveloped her. Mr. Vance. The shopkeeper, Albert Hartman, greeted Wade enthusiastically. "Your order's ready," and his voice trailed off as he noticed Daisy. Wade nodded politely. "Mrs. Richardson will be cooking for the ranch now. She needs some basics to get started." Daisy felt her cheeks burn as Mr. Hartman's eyebrows rose slightly. She knew what he was thinking, what everyone would think, but Wade seemed oblivious to the implications. "Whatever the lady needs, put it on my account," he said, moving to inspect a new saddle on display. Mr. Hartman leaned closer to Daisy. "Heard about your trouble, Mrs. Richardson." "Terrible business, what Thomas did." His voice was sympathetic but his eyes curious. "Yes," Daisy managed. "If you don't mind, I'd like to purchase some necessities." For the next half hour, she selected modest but essential items: sturdy work dresses, undergarments, toiletries, and a few cooking supplies not likely to be found in a bachelor's ranch. She was careful to be frugal, acutely aware of the debt she was accruing. When Wade returned to the counter, Mr. Hartman had everything packaged. "That'll be $12.76 total, including your regular order, Mr. Vance." Wade paid without comment, and they loaded the packages onto Penny. As they prepared to leave town, Daisy noticed whispers and stares from passers-by. Her reputation, she realized, was already in tatters. "People will talk," she said quietly as they reached the edge of town. Wade adjusted his hat. "People always do. Doesn't make it worth listening to." They traveled in companionable silence for several miles. The storm had passed completely now, leaving behind that unique desert freshness that followed rain. Penny's hooves made rhythmic sounds against the hardening mud, and Daisy found herself lulled by the gentle rocking of the saddle. "Tell me about your ranch," she finally said, wanting to know more about the place that would be her new home. Wade glanced up at her. "Started with nothing 10 years ago. Now run about 400 head of cattle. Got 4 regular hands and hire extra during roundup. Main house ain't fancy, but it's solid. Your cabin's close enough to be convenient but far enough for privacy. And you live alone, no family." The moment the question left her lips, Daisy regretted it. "I'm sorry, that's not my business." "No apology needed." Wade's voice remained even. "Was married once. Sarah died in childbirth 8 years ago along with our son." He said it matter-of-factly, but Daisy could hear the old pain beneath the words. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. Wade nodded. "Life goes on. Ranch keeps me busy." After a moment he asked, "What about you?" "Any children?" Daisy shook her head. "Thomas always said we should wait until we were settled. Now I'm grateful we did." She swallowed hard. "We were in Denver before this. Thomas heard about the silver strikes and convinced me to sell everything to finance the move." Wade's expression darkened. "Some men shouldn't make promises." The conversation faded as they crested a hill, revealing a view of Sycamore Creek Ranch spread below them. A cluster of buildings nestled against the backdrop of a small canyon, with corrals, a barn, and what appeared to be a main house. A creek, swollen with rainwater, cut through the property, lined with the sycamore trees that gave the ranch its name. "It's beautiful," Daisy breathed. Wade looked pleased. "Water makes all the difference out here. Creek flows year-round, makes this land worth something." They descended toward the ranch, and Daisy could see activity around the building's men leading horses, smoke rising from the bunkhouse chimney. As they approached, a lanky young man jogged out to meet them. "Boss, we were getting worried with the storm." He eyed Daisy curiously. "Jimmy, this is Mrs. Richardson," Wade said. "She'll be taking over cooking duties. Mrs. Richardson, this is Jimmy Carter, best wrangler in the territory." Jimmy touched his hat respectfully. "Madam, sure glad to hear about the cooking part. Boss makes coffee you could use to shoe horses." Daisy couldn't help smiling. "I'll do my best to improve the situation." Wade handed Jimmy the reins. "Take care of Penny, would you? I'm going to show Mrs. Richardson to the cabin." They walked toward a small structure set apart from the other buildings, situated beneath a large mesquite tree. Wade carried her purchases and his supplies, refusing her offers to help. The cabin was simple but solid, one room with a small lean-to addition. It contained a bed, a table with 2 chairs, a chest of drawers, and a small stove. Though dusty from disuse, it was clean and weathertight. "Like I said, it ain't much," Wade said, setting her packages on the table. Daisy looked around, overwhelmed by the day's swift change in fortune. This morning she'd been homeless and hopeless. Now she had shelter and purpose. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Thank you." Wade looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Well, I'll leave you to get settled. Kitchen's in the main house. Breakfast is at sunup, dinner at noon, supper at sundown. Start tomorrow if you're ready." "I'll be ready," Daisy assured him. At the door, Wade hesitated. "One more thing. Men respect the cook here. Anyone gives you trouble, you tell me." With that, he left, and Daisy was alone in her new home. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her emotions finally catching up with her. She cried then, not from despair this time, but from relief and the lingering pain of betrayal. When the tears subsided, she rose and began unpacking, determined that tomorrow would mark the true beginning of her fresh start. The next morning, Daisy woke before dawn, dressed in one of her new work dresses, and pinned her honey blonde hair into a practical bun. She made her way to the main house by lantern light, nervous about her first day but determined to prove herself worthy of Wade's trust. The ranch kitchen was spacious but neglected, with a massive wood stove, a long preparation table, and open shelving filled with mismatched dishes. Coffee beans, flour, sugar, and other staples were stored in labeled crocks, and a walk-in pantry held smoked meats, preserves, and root vegetables. Daisy stoked the stove first, then explored the pantry to assess what she had to work with. By the time the ranch hands began filing in, she had coffee brewing, biscuits baking, and fatbacks sizzling in a cast-iron skillet. The men entered cautiously, as if approaching a wild animal. 5 of them, including Jimmy from yesterday, nodded politely as they took seats at the long table. "Morning, madam," Jimmy said, sniffing appreciatively. "That coffee smells like actual coffee." "Good morning," Daisy replied, trying to sound confident. "Breakfast will be ready shortly." Wade entered last, and Daisy felt an unexpected flutter in her stomach when their eyes met. He nodded. "Mrs. Richardson." "Mr. Vance," she acknowledged, turning quickly back to the stove. Breakfast was a success. The men devoured the biscuits, fatback, and eggs as if they hadn't eaten properly in months, which Daisy realized they probably hadn't. Wade introduced the other ranch hands. Miguel, an older Mexican cowboy with silver at his temples, brothers Frank and Daniel Walker, both red-headed and freckled, and Caleb, a former slave who had come west after the war and was, according to Wade, the best horseman on the ranch. "Mrs. Richardson will be handling all the cooking from now on," Wade explained. "You treat her with respect or you'll answer to me." The men nodded, looking more grateful than rebellious at the prospect. As they filed out to begin their day's work, Wade lingered. "That was the best meal this kitchen's seen in years." "Thank you," Daisy said, pleased by the compliment. "I should discuss menus and supplies with you when convenient." Tonight after supper, Wade agreed. Need anything before then, Daisy hesitated. I noticed the garden behind the house is overgrown. Would you mind if I worked on it? It's yours, Wade said. Sarah started it. I've let it go, but everything should still be there under the weeds. After he left, Daisy set about cleaning the kitchen properly, scrubbing surfaces that hadn't seen soap in too long and organizing utensils into logical arrangements. By mid-morning, she had bread rising for dinner and stew simmering for supper. She ventured outside to the neglected garden. It was larger than she'd first thought, enclosed by a low stone wall to keep out rabbits and other desert creatures. Though choked with weeds, Daisy could see the structure of what had once been a productive kitchen garden: neat beds, a small herb section, even fruit trees espaliered against the south-facing wall. Kneeling in the soft earth, she began clearing one bed at a time, careful to identify any surviving vegetables. To her delight, she found perennial herbs still thriving beneath the weeds: rosemary, sage, and thyme. Tears pricked her eyes as she gently frayed them, thinking of the woman who had planted them. Sarah's garden, like Sarah herself, had been neglected but not forgotten. By noon, Daisy had made significant progress on one section and had dirt under her fingernails when she hurried back to serve dinner. The men arrived, hungry and appreciative of the fresh bread and bean soup she'd prepared. "This bread," Daniel moaned around a mouthful, "is miraculous." "Mrs. Richardson," Caleb said quietly, "the garden you're working on, I helped Mrs. Vance plant it. If you'd like assistance getting it back in shape, I'd be happy to help when my duties allow." "That's very kind," Daisy said, touched by the offer. "I'd appreciate that." Wade said little during the meal, but Daisy noticed his eyes on her several times. She couldn't quite read his expression: assessment, perhaps, or simple curiosity. The afternoon passed quickly with kitchen work and more gardening. As Daisy prepared supper, the stew, more bread and preserved peaches for dessert, she realized she hadn't thought about Thomas all day. The realization brought both relief and a fresh wave of anger. 5 years of her life, given to a man who had discarded her without a backward glance. Supper was a livelier affair than the earlier meals, the men more comfortable with her presence now. They shared stories of the day's work, teased each other good-naturedly, and complimented her cooking with genuine enthusiasm. When the meal ended, the hands drifted toward the bunkhouse while Wade remained at the table, nursing a cup of coffee. Daisy cleared the dishes, acutely aware of his presence. "Sit," Wade said finally, gesturing to the chair across from him. "You've been on your feet all day." Daisy hesitated, then sat, grateful for the rest. "The men seem nice." "Good workers, all of them," Wade agreed. "Been with me for years, except the Walker boys. They joined last spring." He studied her for a moment. "How are you settling in?" "Well, I think," Daisy said. "The cabin is comfortable and I've plenty to keep me busy." Wade nodded. "About supplies, I usually make a trip to town every 2 weeks. Make a list of what you need for the kitchen." "I will." Daisy traced the wood grain of the table with her fingertip. "Mr. Vance, I want to thank you again for your kindness. Not many would have done what you did." Wade looked uncomfortable. "Any decent person would help someone in need." "We both know that's not true," Daisy said softly. "May I ask why you were in town yesterday? It seems providential that you found me when you did." Wade's fingers tightened around his cup. "Had business at the bank. Was heading home when I saw you." He paused. "Truth is, I recognized you. Saw you and your husband in church when you first arrived in Superior." "Oh." Daisy felt her cheeks warm. "I didn't realize." "No reason you would." Wade stood abruptly. "I should let you rest. You've worked hard today." As he reached the door, Daisy called after him, "Mr. Vance. What are your favorite dishes? For meals, I mean." He turned, a faint smile touching his lips. Apple pie. My mother made it every Sunday. I'll remember that, Daisy promised. After he left, she finished cleaning the kitchen, her mind full of the enigmatic man who had rescued her. Wade Vance was nothing like Thomas, who had been all charm and easy smiles. Wade was reserved, his words carefully chosen. Yet there was kindness in him and pain too, glimpsed briefly when he spoke of his late wife. Walking back to her cabin in the moonlight, Daisy reminded herself that her heart was too recently broken to be noticing such things about her employer. She needed stability and independence now, not another entanglement with a man. Still, as she prepared for bed, she found herself wondering what Wade had truly thought when he saw her in that church 3 months ago, sitting beside the husband who would soon betray her. Days settled into a comfortable rhythm at Sycamore Creek Ranch. Daisy rose before dawn to prepare breakfast, spent mornings baking and preparing dinner, afternoons tending the garden and preparing supper, and evenings planning the next day's meals. True to his word, Caleb helped with the garden when he could, teaching Daisy about desert growing seasons and which native plants could supplement her kitchen herbs. Under their combined efforts, the garden began to flourish again. Mrs. Vance would be pleased, Caleb remarked one afternoon as they surveyed their progress. She loved this garden, said it reminded her of home. Where was home for her? Daisy asked, curious about the woman whose presence still lingered in the ranch house. Tennessee, I believe, Caleb replied. She met the boss during the war. He was a cavalry scout, got wounded behind enemy lines. Her family sheltered him until he could travel again. A romantic beginning, Daisy murmured. Caleb nodded. They were devoted to each other when she died. He shook his head, changed him. He was more open before, laughed more. Daisy thought about that conversation later as she prepared supper. In the 2 weeks she'd been at the ranch, she'd seen Wade smile occasionally but never truly laugh. He was unfailingly polite to her, but maintained a careful distance that went beyond the proper relationship between employer and employee. That evening, as April gave way to May, a sudden dust storm blew in from the west. Daisy was walking back to her cabin after supper when the wind rose dramatically, carrying stinging particles of sand and dust. She hurried inside, closing the door against the howling wind. A knock came just moments later. Startled, she opened the door to find Wade, his bandana pulled up over his nose and mouth. "Storm's bad," he shouted over the wind. "Your roof's new, but these old windows might not keep the dust out. Brought extra cloths to seal them." Together, they worked to stuff rags around the window frames, blocking the worst of the dust that sought entry. The wind moaned around the cabin like a living thing, and occasional thuds suggested flying debris hitting the walls. "Thank you," Daisy said when they finished, raising her voice to be heard. "I wouldn't have known what to do." Wade pulled his bandana down, revealing a face already streaked with dust despite his protection. "These storms can last hours sometimes. You'll be all right here." "Of course," Daisy assured him, though the cabin suddenly seemed fragile against the fury outside. Wade nodded. "I'll check on you in the morning." He turned to leave, but as he opened the door, a violent gust nearly tore it from his grip. Sand and debris blasted into the cabin. "This is worse than I thought," Wade shouted, forcing the door closed again. He looked at Daisy uncertainly. "Might be safer in the main house. Stone walls." Daisy hesitated, conscious of propriety, but another loud thud against the roof decided her. "Let me get my shawl." They made a dash for the main house, Wade's arm around her shoulders protectively as they leaned into the wind. Dust filled Daisy's nose and mouth despite the handkerchief he'd given her to cover her face. By the time they reached the house, her eyes were streaming and her lungs burning. Inside, Wade bolted the door against the storm. The main house was blessedly quiet after the howling outside, its thick walls muffling the worst of the wind. "You're all right?" he asked, his voice rough from the dust. Daisy nodded, though she couldn't stop coughing. "Here." Wade led her to the kitchen, pouring water from a pitcher. "Drink slowly." She sipped gratefully, the water easing her throat. When she could speak again, she said, "I've never experienced anything like that." "Desert has its own ways of reminding us who's really in charge," Wade said, wiping dust from his face with a wet cloth. He offered her another. "You can take the guest room tonight. First door on the left upstairs." "Thank you." Daisy dabbed at her face and hair, acutely aware of how disheveled she must look. "I hope the storm passes quickly." "Usually due by morning." Wade seemed uncomfortable now that the immediate danger had passed. "I'll, show you the room." The main house was simply but comfortably furnished, with solid, well-made pieces that spoke of quality rather than ostentation. As they climbed the stairs, Daisy noticed photographs on the wall: Wade in his cavalry uniform, a wedding portrait, and a beautiful dark-haired woman who must have been Sarah. The guest room was small but welcoming, with a brass bed, a washstand, and a chest of drawers. A colorful quilt covered the bed, and curtains framed windows now tightly shuttered against the storm. "Bathrooms across the hall," Wade said from the doorway, not entering the room. "There are clean towels in the chest, if you need anything else." "I'll be fine," Daisy assured him. "Thank you again." He nodded awkwardly and left her alone. Daisy used the washstand to clean up as best she could, then sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the storm rage outside. Despite the circumstances, there was something intimate about being in Wade's home, seeing the private spaces where he lived. She was about to blow out the lamp when a knock came at her door. Wade stood there, holding a folded nightgown. "Found this in Sarah's things," he said, his voice gruff. "Thought you might be more comfortable." The simple kindness touched Daisy deeply. "That's very thoughtful. Thank you." Their fingers brushed as she took the garment, and that same inexplicable jolt she'd felt the day they met passed between them. Wade pulled his hand back quickly, his expression unreadable in the dim hallway. "Good night, Mrs. Richardson," he said formally. "Good night, Mr. Vance," she replied. Alone again, Daisy changed into the borrowed nightgown, a simple white cotton garment worn soft with washing. As she slipped between the sheets, she tried not to think about the woman who had once worn it, or the man who had once watched her do so. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by the storm's continued assault and dreams that left her restless. In one, Thomas returned, demanding she come with him. In another, more disturbing dream, Wade stood at a distance, watching her with that same unreadable expression, never approaching no matter how she called to him. She woke before dawn to silence. The storm had passed, leaving an eerie quiet in its wake. Daisy dressed quickly in her dust-covered clothes from the previous day, folding the borrowed nightgown carefully on the bed. Downstairs, she found Wade already in the kitchen, stoking the stove to life. "Thought I'd make coffee before you had to," he said by way of greeting. "Storm's passed, but it left a mess. Your cabin looks all right from outside, but there'll be dust everywhere." "I'll clean it after breakfast," Daisy said, automatically moving to help with the coffee. Their hands collided, reaching for the coffee canister, and both pulled back. "Sorry," they said simultaneously. An awkward silence fell, broken only by the crackling of the stove fire. "I should check on the livestock," Wade said finally. "The men will be up soon." After he left, Daisy leaned against the counter, breathing deeply. Something had shifted between them during the night, some awareness that hadn't been there before. Or perhaps it had always been there, just beneath the surface, and the storm had simply exposed it. Either way, it complicated matters. Wade was her employer and benefactor. Her life was in shambles, her heart still raw from betrayal. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for a man who had only offered her kindness out of decency. Forcing such thoughts aside, Daisy busied herself with breakfast preparations. By the time the ranch hands arrived, bleary-eyed and dust-covered, she had hot food waiting and her professional composure firmly in place. Wade ate quickly and left without meeting her eyes. The men lingered, sharing stories of how they'd weathered the storm, but eventually they too departed for their day's work. After cleaning the kitchen, Daisy returned to her cabin. As Wade had predicted, a fine layer of dust covered everything despite their efforts to seal the windows. She spent the morning cleaning, changing her bedding and washing the few clothes she owned, hanging them to dry in the strengthening sunshine. She was in the garden later, assessing storm damage when Wade approached. He'd been avoiding her all day, so his appearance startled her. "Mrs. Richardson," he began formally, his hat in his hands. "I want to apologize if I made you uncomfortable last night." Daisy stood, brushing soil from her hands. "You didn't. You were kind to offer shelter. Still." Wade looked past her toward the distant mountains. "I'm your employer. There are boundaries that should be respected." "Of course," Daisy said, though his words stung in a way she hadn't expected. Wade shifted his weight. "I'm riding into town tomorrow for supplies. If you want to come along, make your own purchases, you'd be welcome." The invitation surprised her. "Thank you, I would appreciate that." He nodded once and turned to go, then hesitated. "The nightgown, it wasn't presumptuous to offer it, no," Daisy said softly. It was thoughtful. Something in his expression eased. "Good, we'll leave after breakfast tomorrow." As promised, they set out for Superior the next morning. The storm had cleared the air, leaving a crystalline blue sky and temperatures that hadn't yet reached the summer's brutal highs. They rode side by side, Wade on Penny and Daisy on a gentle gray mare named Dove. Conversation came easier outside the confines of the ranch, away from the watching eyes of the hands. Wade pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area's history, Apache raids in earlier years, the discovery of silver that had put Superior on the map, the challenges of raising cattle in desert country. "How did you come to ranching?" Daisy asked as they rode. "After the war, I mean." Wade was silent for a moment. "Needed open spaces after what I'd seen. Worked as a scout for the Army for a while, then as a ranch hand. Saved everything I earned. When this land came up for sale, I took a chance." "It was brave to start from nothing," Daisy observed. Wade glanced at her. "No braver than what you're doing now." The comment warmed her, though she shook her head. "I had no choice." "There are always choices," Wade said. "Just not always good ones. You could have gone back east, found family or friends to take you in, and live on charity for the rest of my life." Daisy couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "No, I'd rather make my own way." Wade's expression held approval. "That's why I offered you work, not just shelter. Saw that in you right away, pride, but the good kind." They reached Superior by mid-morning. The town looked different to Daisy now, no longer the place of her humiliation, but simply another settlement clinging to life in the harsh terrain. Still, she felt eyes on her as they rode down Main Street, and whispers followed in their wake. At the general store, Mr. Hartman greeted them with raised eyebrows but professional courtesy. Wade handled his business while Daisy selected kitchen supplies and personal items, using the wages she'd already earned. "Heard your husband's in California now," Mr. Hartman said when Wade stepped outside to check on something. "Got himself into a new mining venture, according to letters." Daisy stiffened. "I wouldn't know. We're not in contact." Mr. Hartman leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Folks are talking, about you and Vance." Heat rushed to Daisy's cheeks. Mr. Vance is my employer, nothing more, if you say so. Mr. Hartman's tone made it clear he didn't believe her. Just thought you should know what's being said. Before Daisy could respond, the store's door opened, and a well-dressed woman entered Mrs. Holloway from the boarding house, accompanied by two other ladies Daisy recognized from church. "Well, Mrs. Richardson," Mrs. Holloway said loudly. "What a surprise to see you in town. We'd heard you'd found employment out at the Vance Ranch." The emphasis she placed on employment left no doubt as to her meaning. The other women exchanged meaningful glances. Daisy straightened her spine. "Mr. Vance has kindly provided me with a position as cook for his ranch hands. It's honest work." "I'm sure it is," one of the other women said with a tight smile. "Though one wonders why a single man would hire a married woman to live on his property." "I am a widow for all practical purposes," Daisy said coldly. "And I live in a separate cabin, cooking for 6 hard-working men who appreciate decent meals." "Of course, dear," Mrs. Holloway said with false sympathy. "We're only concerned for your reputation." The door opened again, and Wade entered. The women fell silent, nodding politely in his direction. "Ladies," he acknowledged, tipping his hat before turning to Daisy. "Ready to go, still need to visit the bank before heading back." Grateful for the rescue, Daisy quickly gathered her purchases. "Yes, all done here." Outside, she blinked back angry tears. "They think I'm that we're." "I know what they think," Wade said grimly. "Small towns run on gossip. It'll die down eventually." "Will it?" Daisy asked. "Or will I always be the abandoned wife who ran to another man's ranch?" Wade's jaw tightened. "You're doing honest work and holding your head high. Anyone who matters will see that." At the bank, Wade conducted his business while Daisy waited outside, uncomfortable under the continued stares of passers-by. When he emerged, his expression was troubled. "Problem?" she asked as they mounted their horses. "Nothing immediate," he replied. "Just some concerns about water rights upstream. Nothing for you to worry about." They were nearly out of town when a voice called out from the saloon doorway. "Vance, heard you got yourself a pretty new cook." Wade tensed but didn't slow their pace. The man, clearly drunk despite the early hour, staggered into the street. "Bet she cooks up more than just meals, eh?" he laughed crudely. "How much you charging for a taste, Vance? Or are you keeping her all to yourself?" Wade's hand moved to his gun, but Daisy reached over, touching his arm. "He's not worth it," she said softly. "Please." After a tense moment, Wade nodded, though his expression remained murderous. They rode past without further acknowledgement, but Daisy could feel Wade's anger radiating from him. Once they were well outside town, he finally spoke. "I apologize for that. Should have known better than to bring you into town so soon." "It's not your fault," Daisy said, though her cheeks still burned with humiliation. "People will think what they want to think. Doesn't make it right." Wade's voice was hard. "If any man spoke to you like that at the ranch, I'd break his jaw." The protective fury in his voice stirred something in Daisy that she tried to ignore. "Thank you, but I've endured worse. At least now I have honest work and my dignity. That's more than I had 2 weeks ago." Wade studied her, his anger softening into something like admiration. "You're a remarkable woman, Daisy Richardson." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice made her heart skip. Before she could respond, Wade urged Penny into a trot, leaving Daisy to follow with her thoughts in turmoil. Back at the ranch, life continued its steady rhythm, but subtle changes marked the passing days. Wade no longer avoided Daisy's company, often lingering after meals to discuss ranch matters or simply share coffee. Occasionally, he brought her wildflowers he'd found while riding the range, desert blooms in vibrant reds and yellows that she arranged in jars around her cabin. May gave way to June, and the heat intensified. Daisy adapted her cooking to the season, preparing cold dishes for midday meals and rising even earlier to bake before the worst heat of the day set in. The garden flourished under her care, providing fresh vegetables for the ranch table. One evening in mid-June, Wade appeared at her cabin door holding a book. "Thought you might enjoy this," he said, offering her a well-worn copy of Wuthering Heights. "Found it when I was clearing some of Sarah's things." Daisy accepted the book, touched by the gesture. "I love reading, but had to leave my books behind when we moved here. Thank you." "There are more in the house," Wade said. "You're welcome to borrow any you like." That began another ritual, the exchange of books and discussions of their contents. Daisy discovered that Wade, despite his rough exterior, was well-read and thoughtful. He had opinions on everything from Dickens to Shakespeare, and their literary discussions often stretched late into the evening. On particularly hot nights, they would sit on the porch of the main house, sipping cool lemonade and talking as the stars emerged in the vast desert sky. During these conversations, Daisy learned more about Wade's life, his childhood in Missouri, his experiences in the war, his dreams for the ranch. In turn, she shared her own story growing up in Pennsylvania, losing her parents to influenza, meeting Thomas at a church social when she was 18. "I thought he hung the moon," she confessed one night. "He was handsome and charming, always full of big plans and dreams." "Some men are better at dreaming than doing," Wade observed. Daisy nodded. "I realize now he never stayed anywhere long enough to put down roots, always chasing the next opportunity, the next fortune." She sighed. "I was so naive." "Not naive," Wade countered. "Hopeful. There's a difference." As July approached, Wade announced plans for a cattle drive to Tucson. "I'll be gone about 2 weeks," he told Daisy. "Frank and Jimmy will stay to help with the ranch while the rest of us are gone." Daisy was surprised by how much the news disappointed her. "When do you leave?" "Monday next," Wade said. "Before I go, I wanted to discuss something with you." Her heart quickened. "Yes. Your position here," Wade began, suddenly formal. "It's been 3 months now and your work has been excellent. I'd like to make the arrangement permanent if you're amenable." "With a raise in wages." "Oh." Daisy tried to hide her confusion. What had she expected him to say? "Thank you, that's very generous." Wade seemed to be weighing his next words carefully. "There's also the matter of your situation. Have you had any word from Thomas?" Daisy shook her head. "No, nor do I expect any." "You might consider filing for divorce," Wade suggested. "Arizona territory makes it relatively simple, especially in cases of abandonment." The idea startled her, though it shouldn't have. "I hadn't thought about it." "It would give you a clean start," Wade said, his tone carefully neutral. "Legally free to make your own choices." There was something in his eyes that made Daisy wonder if he had particular choices in mind, but he didn't elaborate. "I'll consider it," she promised. The night before Wade was to leave on the cattle drive, Daisy prepared a special supper, his favorite dishes, including the apple pie he'd mentioned months ago. The men were in high spirits, looking forward to the journey despite the hard work ahead. After the others left for the bunkhouse, Wade helped Daisy clear the table, an unusual gesture that she attributed to his impending departure. "That was the best meal I've had in years," he said as they worked. "Seems like you went to extra trouble." Daisy smiled. "I wanted you all to have a good send-off. I appreciate it." Wade hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "I have something for you, been meaning to give it to you for a while." He handed her a small box. Inside was a delicate silver brooch in the shape of a daisy. "It's beautiful," she breathed, looking up at him in surprise. "Saw it at a silversmith's in Tucson last time I was there," Wade explained, his usual confidence faltering. Reminded me of you. Daisy pinned it to her collar with trembling fingers. Thank you, I'll treasure it. They stood close in the quiet kitchen, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Wade reached out slowly, as if giving her time to move away, and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Daisy, he said softly, when I get back, there are things I'd like to say to you. Important things, but not with 2 weeks of separation ahead of us. Her heart pounded. I'll be here when you return. His hand lingered near her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. For a breathless moment, Daisy thought he might kiss her, wanted him to kiss her. She realized with startling clarity. Instead, Wade stepped back, his expression conflicted. Good night, Daisy. Good night, Wade, she replied, using his given name for the first time. The intimacy of it hung in the air between them as he left. Alone in her cabin that night, Daisy touched the silver brooch and allowed herself to acknowledge what she'd been denying for weeks. She was falling in love with Wade Vance. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. She'd been so wrong about Thomas. How could she trust her judgment again so soon? Yet Wade was nothing like Thomas. Where Thomas had been all flash and promises, Wade was substance and steadiness. Thomas had taken, Wade gave. Thomas had abandoned her at the first sign of hardship. Wade had built a life from nothing and persevered through devastating loss. The next morning dawned clear and already hot. Daisy rose early to prepare a hearty breakfast for the departing men. The mood was businesslike as they ate, with Caleb and Miguel offering last-minute advice to Daniel, who was going on his first cattle drive. Wade spoke little, but his eyes found Daisy's often across the busy kitchen. When it was time to leave, the men filed out with thanks and good-natured complaints about the cooking they'd be missing. Wade was last to go. Take care of yourself, he said quietly. Frank and Jimmy will look after things, but if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I will, Daisy promised. Be safe. He nodded, his hand brushing hers briefly before he turned to leave. From the kitchen doorway, Daisy watched the men ride out, a knot of emotion tightening in her chest. 2 weeks suddenly seemed an eternity. The first week of Wade's absence passed slowly. Daisy kept busy cooking for Frank and Jimmy, tending her flourishing garden and deep cleaning the ranch house. She read in the evenings, working her way through Wade's modest library, but found herself missing their discussions. One afternoon, as she was preserving vegetables from the garden, a rider approached the ranch. Through the kitchen window, Daisy saw Frank go to meet him, then hurry toward the house. Mrs. Richardson, he called. There's a man here asking for you, says he's your husband. Daisy's heart stopped. She set down the jar she was filling and wiped her hands, trying to steady her suddenly rapid breathing. I'll come out. Thomas Richardson sat atop a rented horse, looking much as he had the day he'd left her, handsome in a flashy way, with his well-groomed mustache and confident posture. Seeing him now, Daisy was struck by how shallow his charm seemed compared to Wade's quiet strength. Daisy, my darling, Thomas called, dismounting smoothly. I've been searching everywhere for you. She approached cautiously, keeping her distance. What do you want, Thomas? He pressed a hand to his heart, feigning hurt. Is that any way to greet your husband? I've come to take you home, of course. Home, Daisy laughed bitterly. You left me without a penny. There is no home. Thomas smiled the smile that had once made her knees weak. Now it only made her angry. That's all in the past. I've struck it rich in California, Daisy, a gold claim that's paying handsomely. I have a house in San Francisco now, a real house with servants, and I want my wife by my side. Your wife, Daisy repeated flatly. The one you abandoned. The one you left to fend for herself while you ran off with a saloon girl. Thomas had the grace to look embarrassed. A momentary weakness, nothing more. She meant nothing to me. It's you I love, Daisy, always have." "Where is she now?" Daisy asked. Thomas waved dismissively. "Gone." "That doesn't matter. What matters is us, our future." Frank and Jimmy had moved closer, hands near their guns. "Everything all right, Mrs. Richardson?" Frank asked, eyeing Thomas suspiciously. "Yes, thank you," Daisy said, grateful for their protective presence. "Mr. Richardson was just leaving." Thomas frowned. "We need to talk privately, Daisy. Family business." "We have nothing to discuss," Daisy said firmly. "You abandoned me. I've built a new life." "As a ranch cook," Thomas scoffed, looking around the property. "Living in what, a servant's cabin?" "You're meant for better things, Daisy. Fine dresses, society parties, a proper home." "I have a home," Daisy replied. "And honest work I'm proud of." Thomas's expression hardened. "Is that all you have here? Or is there another reason you're so reluctant to leave? The ranch owner, perhaps?" "Town's full of talk about you and Vance." Heat rushed to Daisy's face. "Mr. Vance has been a perfect gentleman, which is more than I can say for you." "You're still my wife," Thomas said, his charm slipping to reveal the anger beneath. "I have legal rights." "Not for long," Daisy retorted. "I'm filing for divorce." Thomas stared at her in disbelief, then laughed. "You wouldn't dare. Watch me." Daisy turned to go. "Wait," Thomas called, his tone changing to pleading. "Daisy, please, I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I love you. I came all this way to find you to make things right." Daisy paused, studying the man she'd once adored. There was desperation in his eyes now and something else, calculation. Thomas had always been good at reading people, at figuring out what they wanted to hear. "Why now, Thomas?" she asked quietly. "Why come back now?" He stepped toward her, hands spread entreatingly. "I told you I've made my fortune. I can give you the life you deserve now." But Daisy had learned to look beyond words to actions, and something didn't add up. "You didn't answer my question." "Why now, specifically?" Thomas hesitated just a fraction too long. I missed you, couldn't stop thinking about you." "Mr. Hartman mentioned you've been writing letters from California," Daisy said. "Interesting that you never wrote to me." "I didn't know where you were," Thomas protested. "You could have asked anyone in town," Daisy countered. "No, there's something else, something you're not telling me." Thomas's pleasant mask slipped further. "Fine. The claim isn't doing as well as I hoped. I need more capital to develop it properly. But it's a sure thing, Daisy. We'll be rich." And there it was, the real reason. "Let me guess," Daisy said, the pieces falling into place. "You heard I was working for Wade Vance, one of the most successful ranchers in the territory. You thought I might have access to money, his money." Thomas had the decency to look ashamed. "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that," Daisy said coldly. "You haven't changed at all, still chasing get-rich-quick schemes, still looking for someone else to fund them." "Daisy, goodbye, Thomas." She turned her back on him, walking toward the house. "You can't dismiss me like a servant," Thomas shouted after her. "I'm still your husband." Daisy kept walking, her legs trembling but her resolve firm. Behind her, she heard Frank's voice. "You heard the lady. Time for you to leave." "This isn't over, Daisy," Thomas called. "I'll be at the hotel in Superior for a week. Think about what you're throwing away." Inside the house, Daisy sank into a chair, her whole body shaking with reaction. After all these months, to see Thomas again, to see him clearly for what he was, left her feeling both vindicated and deeply sad for the years she'd wasted loving him. Frank appeared at the door. "He's gone, Mrs. Richardson. Want me to ride to Tucson, find the boss?" Daisy considered it, then shook her head. "No, Mr. Vance has important business there. I can handle Thomas." "If you're sure," Frank said doubtfully. "But Jimmy or I will be nearby if he comes back." "Thank you." Daisy managed a smile. "I appreciate that." That night, Alone in her cabin, Daisy found herself reaching for the silver brooch Wade had given her, drawing comfort from its solid weight in her palm. Thomas's return had clarified her feelings beyond any doubt. Whatever uncertainty she'd felt about her growing attachment to Wade was gone, replaced by a clear-eyed certainty. She loved Wade Vance not with the giddy infatuation she'd felt for Thomas, but with a deeper, steadier emotion born of respect and genuine knowing. Whether Wade returned, those feelings remained to be seen, but she would face that question honestly when he returned. For now, she had another matter to address. The next morning, Daisy asked Jimmy to drive her into Superior. "You sure about this, Mrs. Richardson?" Jimmy asked as they approached the town. "What if your husband makes trouble?" "That's why I asked you to come," Daisy said. "But I don't think he will. Thomas avoids confrontation when he can, and I need to see the lawyer." Mr. Atwood, Superior's only attorney, was a balding man with spectacles and a formal manner. He listened carefully as Daisy explained her situation. "Abandonment is indeed grounds for divorce in Arizona territory," he confirmed. "However, with your husband now returned and claiming he wishes to reconcile, it complicates matters." "He abandoned me for 3 months without a word," Daisy said firmly. "Left me destitute. I don't wish to reconcile." Mr. Atwood nodded. "I understand. There's another approach we could take. Arizona recognizes divorce on grounds of cruelty, which can be mental as well as physical. Abandonment causing financial hardship could qualify." "Then that's what I want to pursue," Daisy said. "Very well. I'll prepare the papers." Mr. Atwood peered at her over his spectacles. "There will be fees, of course." Daisy placed a small stack of bills on his desk, her savings from 3 months of wages. "Will this be sufficient to start?" The attorney counted the money and nodded. "Yes, this covers the initial filing. There may be additional costs as we proceed." "I understand. I'll find a way to pay them." As Daisy and Jimmy left the law office, she spotted Thomas across the street, emerging from the hotel. He saw her at the same moment and hurried toward them. "Daisy," he called. "What a pleasant surprise. I was just coming to see you." Jimmy stepped slightly in front of Daisy, but she placed a hand on his arm. "It's all right, Jimmy. I'll speak with him." Thomas eyed Jimmy with distaste. "Could we talk privately, my dear? Anything you have to say can be said in front of Mr. Carter," Daisy replied coolly. Thomas's smile tightened. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But surely we can work this out without involving lawyers." So he'd seen her leaving Atwood's office. "I've already filed for divorce, Thomas." "There's nothing to work out." "Daisy, be reasonable," Thomas urged, lowering his voice. "A divorce would ruin your reputation. Think of the scandal." "My reputation?" Daisy laughed incredulously. "You left me penniless in a strange town." "Whatever reputation I had was damaged by your actions, not mine." Thomas glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of their confrontation. "Let me make amends. We could start fresh somewhere New San Francisco, perhaps. No one would have to know about this. Temporary separation." "It wasn't temporary," Daisy said firmly. "It was you leaving me for another woman and taking everything we owned." Thomas winced. "Must you be so blunt?" "Yes, because you don't seem to understand." Daisy met his eyes directly. "I don't love you anymore, Thomas. I don't trust you. And I don't want to be married to you." The charm fell away completely now, revealing the petulant, selfish man beneath. "It's Vance, isn't it? You've fallen for him. Does he know you're still married? That you're committing adultery?" Jimmy stepped forward, his expression dangerous. "Watch your mouth." Daisy placed a restraining hand on Jimmy's arm. "There's been no impropriety between Mr. Vance and myself. But yes, I have feelings for him, feelings based on respect and admiration, not empty charm and false promises. You think he'll marry you? Thomas sneered. A respectable rancher like Vance taking on a divorced woman. Don't be naive, Daisy. His words struck a nerve, the very fear she'd been trying to ignore, but Daisy refused to show it. That's not your concern. The papers have been filed, Thomas. I suggest you return to California. This isn't over, Thomas warned, but the threat sounded hollow even to her ears. Yes, it is, Daisy said quietly. Goodbye, Thomas. She walked away, Jimmy close beside her. This time, Thomas didn't follow. That took courage, Mrs. Richardson, Jimmy said as they drove back to the ranch. Daisy looked out at the desert landscape, feeling lighter than she had in months. Not as much as you might think. It's easy to be brave when you're finally seeing clearly. The remaining days until Wade's return passed in a blur of activity. Daisy threw herself into her work, baking and preserving as if preparing for a siege. The physical labor helped keep her mind off the confrontation with Thomas and the uncertainty of what would happen when Wade returned. The divorce papers arrived by courier 3 days after her visit to Mr. Atwood. Daisy signed them with a steady hand, feeling a complex mix of emotions: relief, sadness for what might have been, and hope for what lay ahead. On the afternoon Wade was expected back, Daisy found herself changing her dress 3 times before settling on a simple blue cotton that brought out her eyes. She pinned Wade's brooch to the collar and twisted her hair into a more flattering style than her usual practical bun. She was in the kitchen preparing a welcome home supper when she heard the men arrive. Through the window, she watched them dismount, dusty and tired from the trail. Her eyes found Wade immediately taller than the others, his familiar stance recognizable even at a distance. The men headed for the bunkhouse to clean up, but Wade turned toward the main house. Daisy's heart hammered as she heard his boots on the porch, then the door opening. "Daisy," he called. "In the kitchen," she answered, wiping suddenly damp palms on her apron. Wade appeared in the doorway, trail dust clinging to his clothes, his face sunburned and stubbled with 2 weeks' growth of beard. To Daisy, he had never looked more handsome. "Welcome home," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Wade's eyes took in her appearance, lingering on the brooch at her collar. A slow smile spread across his face. "Good to be home." He stepped into the kitchen, closing the distance between them. "Something smells wonderful. Roast beef, potatoes, and apple pie for dessert," Daisy said. "I thought you all deserved a special meal after the drive." "The drive went well," Wade said. "Got a good price for the cattle." He paused, studying her face. "But I hear there's been excitement here while I was gone." So he knew about Thomas. Daisy nodded. "News travels fast." "Caleb met a freighter on the trail who mentioned your husband was in Superior, looking for you." Wade's expression darkened. "Frank filled in the rest when we arrived. Are you all right?" "Yes," Daisy said. "Better than all right, actually." She hesitated, then added, "I've filed for divorce." Something flickered in Wade's eyes, relief perhaps, or hope. "That's a big step." "The right one," Daisy assured him. "Seeing Thomas again only confirmed what I already knew: our marriage was over long before he left me in Superior." Wade moved closer, close enough that she could smell the leather and dust of the trail on him. "Daisy, before I left, I said there were things I wanted to tell you when I got back." Her heart leapt. "Yes, I remember." "I spent 2 weeks thinking about those things," Wade continued, his voice deepening. "Practiced them in my head so I'd get them right." He smiled ruefully. "But now that I'm standing here looking at you, all those careful words have vanished." Daisy smiled. "Just say what's in your heart, Wade." He took her hand, his touch gentle despite his calloused palm. "I love you, Daisy Richardson. Have since that day I found you crying under the cottonwood, tried not to, knowing you were married and hurting. but every day I spent with you, seeing your strength and kindness, just made those feelings stronger. Joy flooded through Daisy, bright and overwhelming. I love you too, she whispered. It sneaked up on me, your quiet kindness, your integrity, the way you built this beautiful life from nothing. Wade's free hand came up to cup her cheek. I know it's soon. Know you're still legally married. But when you're free, if you'll have me, I want to make a life with you. A real life, not just employer and employee. That's what I want too, Daisy said, tears of happiness welling in her eyes. Wade leaned down, hesitating just a breath away from her lips. May I, please? Daisy whispered. His kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deepening as she responded. His arms encircled her, strong and secure, and Daisy felt as if she'd finally found her true home. When they parted, both breathing a little faster, Wade pressed his forehead to hers. I've wanted to do that for months. Me too, Daisy admitted, though I tried not to admit it, even to myself. Wade smiled, stroking her cheek with his thumb. We'll need to be proper until the divorce is final. I won't have anyone questioning your reputation. Thomas already is, Daisy said with a sigh. He accused me of improper relations with you. Anger flashed in Wade's eyes. Is he still in town? Because I have some things to say to him. No violence, Daisy pleaded. He's not worth it. And I expect he's gone back to California by now. There's nothing here for him. Wade nodded reluctantly. For your sake, I'll keep my distance. But if he threatens you or speaks ill of you again. I know, Daisy said, smiling up at him. My protective cowboy. The sound of boots on the porch broke the intimate moment. Wade stepped back just as Caleb entered the kitchen. Something sure smells good in here, Caleb said, his knowing eyes taking in their flushed faces. Supper will be ready soon, Daisy said, turning back to the stove. I'll get cleaned up, Wade said, heading for the door. At the threshold he paused, looking back at Daisy with such tenderness that her heart swelled. Don't serve until I get back. The next few weeks passed in a sweet agony of restraint. True to his word, Wade maintained a proper distance in public, though his eyes often sought Daisy's across rooms, conveying volumes in a single glance. They found moments of privacy, walks along the creek at sunset, conversations on the porch after the hands had retired, when they could speak freely of their feelings and dreams for the future. In late July, Thomas made one last attempt to change Daisy's mind, sending a letter full of promises and pleas. Daisy read it once, then burned it in the kitchen stove, watching the paper curl and blacken with a sense of finality. August brought news that Thomas had returned to California without contesting the divorce. According to Mr. Atwood, the proceedings would likely be completed within months. By Christmas, you'll be a free woman, Wade said as they walked along the creek one evening, fingers intertwined. I already feel free, Daisy replied. Free to love who I choose, free to build the life I want. Wade stopped, turning to face her. In the golden light of sunset, his eyes were warm and certain. And what kind of life do you want, Daisy Richardson? She smiled up at him. One with meaning and purpose. One filled with love and honesty. She touched his cheek. One with you. Wade captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I want to show you something. He led her along the creek, past the boundaries of the garden to a small rise overlooking the property. Here, the view extended for miles, the ranch buildings below, the creek winding through the land, mountains purple in the distance. This is my favorite spot on the ranch, Wade said. When I first bought this land, I'd come up here at sunset and imagine what it could become. Daisy gazed out at the vista. It's beautiful. I've been thinking, Wade continued, a hint of nervousness in his voice, about building a new house. The old one has too many memories, and it was never quite what I wanted anyway. A new house, Daisy repeated, her heart quickening. Wade nodded. I thought maybe here on this rise. Big windows to catch the sunset, a proper kitchen for you, room for. He hesitated, then finished softly, for children someday, if you want them. Tears filled Daisy's eyes at the tender hope in his voice. I do want them, very much. Wade drew her close, his arms strong around her. I know we can't make anything official until the divorce is final, but I wanted you to know I'm planning for our future, for a life together. Daisy leaned into his embrace, feeling safe and cherished. I've never been happier than I am right now in this moment with you. Wade kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and devotion that left her breathless. Against her lips he whispered, just wait. The best is yet to come. December brought two gifts: the finalization of Daisy's divorce and the first snow of the winter, dusting the desert landscape with a rare blanket of white. The day the official papers arrived, Wade rode into Superior himself to collect them, returning to the ranch with the documents and something else he refused to show her. Tonight, he said mysteriously, after supper. The hands, who had watched the romance unfold with approving eyes, made themselves scarce that evening. After a simple meal, Wade led Daisy to the spot on the rise where he'd spoken of building a house. Despite the cold, the night was clear, stars blazing in the black velvet sky. Wade had prepared a surprise. A small fire burned in a stone circle with blankets spread nearby. He guided Daisy to sit, wrapping a warm blanket around her shoulders. It's official, he said, handing her the divorce decree. You're free. Daisy looked at the document, feeling a complex mixture of emotions: relief, closure, and overwhelming hope for the future. Free to start over, just as you promised that first day. Wade smiled, taking her hands in his. I have something for you, something I've been waiting to give you. From his pocket, he withdrew a small box. Opening it, he revealed a ring, a delicate gold band set with a modest but perfect diamond. Daisy Richardson, Wade said, his voice husky with emotion. From the moment I saw you under that cottonwood tree, something in my soul recognized you. Like a piece of myself I didn't know was missing had suddenly been found. He took a deep breath. I love your strength, your kindness, your remarkable heart. Will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? Tears of joy streamed down Daisy's face as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, with all my heart. Wade slipped the ring onto her finger, then gathered her into his arms, his kiss conveying all the love and promise of their future together. That night, sitting by the fire under the desert stars, they planned their new life: the house they would build, the family they hoped to create, the love they would nurture through all the seasons to come. I used to think finding silver was going to be my salvation, Daisy mused, nestled against Wade's chest. How wrong I was. This you, this land, this love, this is the real treasure. Wade's arms tightened around her. When I found you crying that day, I only meant to offer help. I never imagined I was really finding my future, my happiness. Sometimes, Daisy said softly, the ending of one story is just the beginning of a better one. They married on New Year's Day, 1883, in a simple ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by the hands who had become family and a few supportive friends from town. Daisy wore a cream-colored dress she'd made herself, with Wade's silver daisy brooch pinned over her heart. Spring brought the groundbreaking for their new home on the rise, built to Wade's careful plans with wide windows to capture the sunset just as he'd promised. Summer saw them move in, arranging their combined possessions and creating a home filled with books, music, and laughter. By the following winter, Daisy's garden had expanded to feed not just the ranch hands but also to sell produce in Superior, establishing her reputation as a businesswoman in her own right. The whispers that had once dogged her had long since faded, replaced by respect for the hard-working rancher's wife who had overcome adversity with grace. And when, in the spring of 1884, Daisy gave birth to a son they named William, after Wade's father, their joy was complete. Wade held his son with trembling hands, tears in his eyes as he looked from the baby to Daisy. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a family again, for giving me everything." Daisy reached up to touch his face, her heart so full it felt it might burst. "We gave it to each other. That day under the cottonwood you helped me start over. But really, we started over together." As twilight painted the desert in gold and purple, the Vance family stood on the porch of their home on the rise, Wade with his arm around Daisy, who cradled little William against her heart. Below them, Sycamore Creek Ranch sprawled, thriving and peaceful. "Look at all we've built," Wade said softly. "And all we will continue to build," Daisy added, leaning into his embrace. In that moment, with the man she loved and the child they had created, Daisy knew that her life had come full circle, from despair to joy, from abandonment to belonging, from tears beneath a cottonwood tree to laughter in a home filled with love. It was everything she could have wished for, and more than she had ever dared to dream.